At this time, there are desperate cries for help, for oxygen from different parts of the country. People struggling, gasping for air. And in the midst of this pandemic, as you will see in this India Today special investigation, Operation Oxygen Bazaar, there are unscrupulous vendors who are turning this crisis into an opportunity to profiteer. And these are the vultures who will be exposed on the Newstrack in our lead report tonight.
Gasping for life. Mayday calls resonate across the country.
इस बार कोरोना संकट में देश के अनेक हिस्से में ऑक्सीजन की डिमांड बहुत ज्यादा बढ़ी है। इस विषय पर तेजी से और पूरी संवेदनशीलता के साथ काम किया जा रहा है। केंद्र सरकार, राज्य सरकारें, प्राइवेट सेक्टर सभी की पूरी कोशिश है कि हर जरूरतमंद को ऑक्सीजन मिले।
As supplies of oxygen reached a breaking point in the face of the second devastating wave of coronavirus, an India Today investigation found how vendors have begun black marketing a lifeline now in lethally short supply. A resource that can be pulled from the air, sold 5 times the usual price. This oxygen dealer solicited rupees 1,500 for a refill of a large cylinder that would otherwise cost just rupees 300 and rupees 500 for a small one otherwise priced at rupees 100.
ये मैं रख लूँगा आपको कितने पैसे लगेंगे? 2000 कितने किलो का है ये सिलेंडर? ये 47 किलो। इसमें 47 किलो गैस आ जाएगी? लीटर से आता है। अच्छा, लीटर में कितने आएगी लीटर? 47 लीटर आएगी। ये 2000 रुपये में आप? ये 1500 में भर दोगे। अच्छा, तो कितने देर में दे दोगे? तो गाड़ी का बस इंतजार कर रहा हूँ, 15-20 मिनट आधा घंटा दूंगा। परसों ही लेके गए थे भाई साहब, 1200 रुपये आपने खुद दिया है। सबको कह रहे हैं रोज के रेट हो गए। छोटे मछली क्या लेगा भाई? यहाँ खड़े हो छोटे वाले के भर लोगे? नहीं 500।
According to the Union Health Ministry, clinical demand for the gas has jumped to 60% of the overall daily production because of the ongoing crisis. Supplies for now have been banned to many industries to meet hospital requirements. Price caps are already in place, but data points to a different problem. A huge gap between the current stocks of oxygen, both medical and industrial, and supplies appear to be causing crippling shortages. And that in turn has led to black marketing of the gas. This vendor in Delhi's Shahadra demanded more than double the price of one 7-liter cylinder.
ये वाले हैं बेटा, ये कितने का होगा? ये 6000 रुपए का। ये वाला 6000 रुपए का है। हाँ, कौन? ये ऑक्सीजन जनरेटर जो ये मिल रहा है ना बेटा? हाँ,
With patients choking for breath, black marketing of oxygen appears to be thriving. This vendor sought 6 times the price for refilling one small canister.
सिलेंडर लाए हो, दिखाओ सिलेंडर। 2 घंटे वेट करो, 2 घंटे बाद गाड़ी आएगी, ले जाओ। कितने का होगा? 300 रुपये ओनली गैस। इसके 600 रुपये लगेंगे। जाएगी, फुल होके आएगी तब मिलेगा।
Hit by a brutal wave, shortages of supplies, and profiteering at the same time. A report by Nitin Jain and Jamshed Khan for India Today's Special Investigation Team.
What you've seen so far is India Today's investigation, Operation Oxygen Bazaar. I want to show you a ground report from different parts of the country where people are literally standing in long queues. Instead of relying on the healthcare facilities to provide them with oxygen, as should ordinarily be the case, relatives of patients are being told, apna oxygen khud leke aao. And then begins the mad scramble where harried relatives are running from pillar to post, willing to do anything to try and find that little bit of oxygen which can save the lives of their loved ones.
The line between life and death. A near outage of the most important weapon for survival. Wrenching images of the chaos that an oxygen crisis has wrought across the country as COVID cases explode.
Did you get the cylinder here at?
Not at all. No, not at all. Because my patient, my father is admitted and he require O2. Hospital raising their hand. We don't have oxygen. Arrange yourself. So we came here to get the cylinder, O2 cylinder. But all of a sudden, police came and said कि it is an government order. You will not get a cylinder.
सुबह से लगे हुए 5 बजे लाइन पे सर, मरीज घर पे पड़ा हुआ है हमारा 5 बजे से दौड़ रहे हैं, यहाँ से लाठी लेके चार्ज कर रहे हैं, लाइन लगे, नंबर आया तो भगा दिया, सिलेंडर लेके भगा दिया उन्होंने.
A desperate, unprecedented scramble as the dear ones gasp for air back in hospitals.
सर लाइट भी जा रही है, मेडिकल सप्लाई भी देनी है और दोनों काम हमें देखने हैं. इनका भी देखना है, लेकिन इनका प्रशासन जाकर के मना कर चुका है. इनके 5 सिलेंडर अंदर है, हमें वही केवल देने हैं. इसके अलावा हम सिंगल कोई एक्सेप्ट नहीं कर रहे. सर हम दे रहे हैं, लेने वालों से पूछिए. हम तो 4 दिन से दे रहे हैं, 5 दिन से दे रहे हैं. जब से प्रशासन मना किया तब भी दे रहा. नोटिस लगे होने के बावजूद हम इनको दे रहे हैं.
Hospitals in the national capital were on the verge of an oxygen blackout before the emergency supplies trickled in.
आप कोविड पेशेंट को लेकर आए, क्या कह रहे हैं हॉस्पिटल वाले?
नो ऑक्सीजन, नो ऑक्सीजन, नो बेड. ओखला ही है सही में.
कहाँ पे बैठे हैं अभी? आप काम क्या करते हैं अभी?
मैं जीबी पंत में एक्सरे डिपार्टमेंट में थी, रिटायर्ड हूँ.
Only pure oxygen, that too in large quantities, can help save the critically ill COVID patients, reporting radically low levels of blood oxygen.
Most of the hospitals, including government and private hospitals, have said that they have only a few hours worth of oxygen left as the centre and Delhi government scramble to arrange oxygen for all the patients who need it in the capital city. Hundreds are standing in line for getting the COVID testing done. And the line you can see is not maintaining social distancing. So even though we are dealing with a massive surge of COVID cases, people are still not following the distancing norms, as you can see.
The day's worst unfolded in Maharashtra's Nashik when oxygen leaked at the Zakir Hussain Hospital in the city. At least 22 COVID patients died after they lost the supplies.
इस अस्पताल में जो टांकी बिठाई गई थी, उस टांकी का कॉक डैमेज होने की वजह से सवेरे प्रेशर नीचे आ गया. इस वजह से इन्वेसिव वेंटिलेटर पे जितने भी लोग थे उनको ऑक्सीजन टाइम पे मिला नहीं. 22 लोगों की मौत हो चुकी है. वो टांकी इमीडिएटली 1-आधे घंटे के अंदर भी शुरू हो गई. वो अभी उसी टांकी से सप्लाई हो रहा है, लेकिन इस दौरान जो प्रेशर कम हुआ उस वजह से यह हादसा हुआ.
Supplies are being replenished as the crisis deepened. But anticipatory measures during the first wave itself could have helped avert the devastation the second surge has unleashed on the nation. Bureau Report, India Today.
Now, the people of India are literally gasping for air, desperate for oxygen supplies. And in the midst of all of this, we've got our netas playing a game of tu me, blaming each other for this current situation instead of working proactively. For a perspective of just how bad it got last night in some of the best known hospitals in our country, where oxygen supply was down to the last few hours, we have Dr. Arvinder Soin. He's the chairman at the Institute of Liver Transplantation Regenerative Medicine at Medanta. We have Raghav Chadda representing the Aam Aadmi Party in the capital. We have Sanju Verma representing the BJP. And we're also hoping to find some solutions and try and shed light on what those who manufacture oxygen are really looking for in terms of help from the system. We have BC Bhartiya. He's the founder of Bhartiya Medicare and the national president of the Confederation of All India Traders. I want to go across to Dr. Swen first. Can you tell our viewers, sir, about not just at your hospital, but everything that you picked up from your colleagues in the medical fraternity, just how bad was the situation last night? We're seeing the politics play itself out, but leave that on the side for the time being. From a medical perspective, how are things at this moment, and what's your projection going forward?
All things were pretty grim last night. They were helped by some last-minute efforts to deliver oxygen to hospitals that were literally going to run out of them somewhere between 12 and 3 a.m. And those supplies got delivered, thankfully. So immediate disasters were averted. In fact, in our own hospital, we decided not to do any elective surgeries because of shortage of oxygen as of yesterday. But then we were assured some supplies, so we have done some semi-emergency cases. So it's very palpable, very real. The oxygen shortage is really the most, the most important hurdle to healing patients with COVID disease at the moment.
Raghav Chadda, we've seen late in the evening the Chief Minister of Delhi put out a statement saying that oxygen supplies have finally been increased because our aim here is not to create panic but to give people the true picture so that they have hope if there is reason to have hope, and they are concerned if there's reason to be concerned. What's the current situation according to you?
Well, first of all, Rahul, through you, I also thank the union government, several ministers in the union government who have been very generous and finally agreeing to increasing the allocation of the Delhi government or the state of Delhi's oxygen quota from 378 metric ton to 500 metric ton. In fact, the demand placed before the union government by the Delhi government was of 700 metric tons of oxygen. However, only 378 metric tons were sanctioned to us in the first place. However, after several petitions before the union government, they have finally agreed and increased the quota substantially. So we do thank them. However, the situation at this point in time in Delhi is worrisome because this allocation will only come into effect after, I think, to the best of my understanding, 24 to 48 hours because from states like Odisha, increased quota of oxygen will be transported and it will finally reach Delhi after a substantial number of hours. So at this point in time, we're again, living in extremely challenging times. These are desperate times. We're literally monitoring each and every truck, whether that truck has left the premises, that is the premises of the production house, has it crossed the Delhi border, has it entered Delhi, is it about to reach the hospital? The movement of every truck minute by minute is being tracked by our bureaucrats and by our ministers because the situation is such that there are hospitals where only a few hours of oxygen is left. In fact, I've been given to understand that Max Hospital, which has only 2 hours of oxygen left at its Shalimar Bagh premises and 3 hours of oxygen left at its Parparganj premises, has petitioned the Honorable High Court. The Delhi High Court has granted them an urgent hearing at 8 p.m. today, and as we speak, the hearing is going on. So the situation is grim. Situation is very grim. Though we thank the union government, we can only pray that we are able to manage for the next 48 hours with the limited amount of oxygen that we have. Now, you also need to understand, Rahul, that, and I was doing this calculation, that the total number of patients requiring high flow oxygen as a proportion of total number of patients admitted in the hospital, this time around is significantly higher than the year 2020. So the high flow oxygen's demand in Delhi and perhaps in the rest of the country has increased by leaps and bounds. On the other hand, you have a supply side issue because the production capacity is limited and also what you see, and questions have been raised by several people vis-a-vis the exports of oxygen, how the government of India has exported 9,200 metric ton of precious life-saving oxygen in the last 9 to 10 months.
Okay,
to countries like
so
Bangladesh.
let Sanju Verma respond to it, because the sum of your charge is that India was exporting oxygen supplies, not augmenting our own production capabilities, and therefore we're now literally, Sanju Verma, gasping for air. Respond to Raghav Chadha.
You know, Rahul, I have been listening to Raghav Chadha very patiently, and I'm sure he'll extend me the same courtesy. I would hate to politicize this entire paucity of oxygen issue because we are all in this together, and I'm glad that Raghav Chadha acknowledged, albeit grudgingly, that union cabinet ministers of the Modi government have gone out on a limb to ensure that the shortage of oxygen in Delhi hospitals is duly resolved, cutting across political ideologies, what have you. Having said this, let me tell you very categorically that in FY20 we exported 4,500 MT of oxygen, liquid medical grade oxygen. In FY21, yes, we exported 9,000 MT of medical grade oxygen. But that was because in the first COVID wave, the daily demand for oxygen was between 700 to 2,800 metric ton. Now suddenly in the second wave, the demand has risen to more than 3,200 MT per day. But I have also got the latest data from Health Ministry. I am told that while the demand per day is 3,200 MT, the supply is close to 7,300 MT, and we have 50,000 metric tons of surplus medical grade oxygen in stock. So then what is causing this hullabaloo about lack of oxygen? I think as Rajesh, Siddhant Jain of Inox Products, which is the largest manufacturer of medical grade oxygen, rightfully said 24 hours back, it's not the lack of oxygen, but it's the lack of trucks, lack of oxygen cylinders, and lack of cryogenic tankers to transport medical grade oxygen from one place to another, which is causing all the associated problems. I just want to tell Raghav Chadha one thing. It's all very well to castigate the Modi government and say that we asked for 700 MT, you initially gave us 378, then you raised it to 500 MT after 7 petitions. Excuse me, health is a subject which belongs to the state government or respective union territories. Raghav Chadha, does Delhi's, no, let me complete, I did not interrupt him, Rahul. Does Delhi's Health Minister Satyendra Jain have no responsibility? Does Delhi's Transport Minister Kailash Gehlot have no responsibility? Arvind Kejriwal spent 659 crores in the last 1 year on stupid advertisements on national television saying, मेरे बाबूजी ने वैक्सीन लगा ली है जी, मैंने वैक्सीन लगा ली है जी. Tell me how many hospital beds did Arvind Kejriwal set up since he came to power the second time round? Tell me how many hospitals did you establish since Arvind Kejriwal came to power the second time round? And I want to ask you,
so you asked several questions.
Should union territories not be held accountable?
Okay.
Does Arvind Kejriwal have no accountability to the citizens?
So you asked several questions.
That's my point.
Let Raghav Chadha respond to this, because this question is being asked by the central BJP, that you're constantly putting the onus on the center. What about the part of the onus that rests on your shoulders? Raghav Chadha. Okay, Sanju, you've spoken enough now. Let Raghav counter that.
You only want to spend on advertisements and come on national television and pat yourself on the back when things go well, and criticize the government when things go out of hand.
This verbal heckling needs to stop. This verbal heckling needs to stop.
Let Raghav Chadha speak.
Look, first of all, Rahul, as far as this claim of the center to abdicate its responsibility and shift the entire onus on states is concerned, let me say this in no uncertain terms, and I think anybody who's literate and not ignorant would know this, that Disaster Management Act is in effect in India, which essentially means that all powers to make decisions, take critical decisions, policy decisions vis-a-vis handling of COVID-19 pandemic is centralized in the union government. Every state government looks at union government for its policy measures, and very little legroom is given to each and every state. You know this, I know this, and anyone who's not ignorant would know this. That's number one. However, the Delhi government is not running away from its responsibility. From 50 oxygen beds, we have come to 18,000 oxygen beds over a span of 1 year. We've ramped up healthcare infrastructure in Delhi in a huge way. However, oxygen supply, oxygen shortage is an issue that has crept up, that has arisen over the last 72 hours in Delhi, and we have highlighted that before the union government. Supply is an issue. In fact, if supply and production of oxygen is not an issue, as the BJP representative claims, then why has oxygen for industrial use diverted for medical purposes if supply was never an issue, if production of oxygen was never an issue? The fact is that the country is not producing as much as it's required to consume for medical purposes. And lastly, let me say this. I am most gracious. I have thanked the union government for increasing the quota from 378 to 500 metric ton. While I also, in the same breath, acknowledge that they have increased, I also say that our demand was 700 metric ton. They initially gave us 378, and even that 378, Rahul, did not land up in Delhi merely because officers of the Haryana government physically captured these sites, the production sites where oxygen was being manufactured, and stopped the trucks from leaving the premises to go to Delhi. This happened all throughout the day. You know this, I know this. If you physically capture by sending your police force and your bureaucrats to production sites and not let that production take place, or not let that oxygen go to any other state but yours, a catastrophe like this can lead to...
So that's a direct charge against the BJP government in Haryana. I'm going to give Sanju Verma an opportunity to respond to this before I go across to the person who manufactures oxygen and understand his perspective. Sanju Verma, quick counter, please.
Thank you. Rahul, now I need to be taken on the screen all alone like you've done with Raghav Chadda, so that I am not interrupted. Yeah, Rahul, can I please be on the screen all alone? Because, you know, why is it that when he speaks, you just take him on air, all alone with no interruptions? Yeah. Let me first tell you that Raghav Chadda is a past master at misleading and misinforming, just like his boss Arvind Kejriwal. First of all, Raghav Chadda said Delhi government has ensured 18,000 beds in terms of availability. Let me tell you, be it the 10,000 bed COVID care facility, the Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel facility which I am talking of at Chhatarpur, or be it the DRDO facility in Delhi near the airport, all these have come back with a vengeance to ensure that Delhiites don't suffer, thanks to two people, Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Home Minister Amit Shah. So Arvind Kejriwal ji, जब दिल्ली वालों की हालत सुधर जाएगी तब ट्विटर पर आके अपने आप को शाबाशी जरूर दे देना. फिलहाल you just keep coming every few minutes on national television with those juvenile ads. Point number 2, I want to ask Raghav Chadda, when cases in Delhi in February were just 300 or 500 per day, why did you recommend to the central government that you want the ITBP operated Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel COVID Care Center to be shut down? Point number 2. Point number 3, Raghav Chadda, you are both ignorant and illiterate. Let me tell you, in the last 24 hours, Rahul, please ask him to keep quiet. I did not interrupt him, you will have to mute him. In the last 24 hours, Raghav Chadda, let me tell you, be it the LNJP hospital, be it Gangaram, or be it Guru Tegh Bahadur Hospital, 11,000 cubic meters of oxygen have been provided by Haryana, Uttar Pradesh and the central government. I think Raghav Chadda, you have no idea about numbers. You come on national television, you take pot shots, but the fact is you have forgotten what good governance is all about. I want to ask one question, Rahul, through your channel, which has a great viewership. ऑक्सीजन प्रोवाइड करना जॉब ऑफ नरेंद्र मोदी, वेंटिलेटर्स प्रोवाइड करना जॉब ऑफ नरेंद्र मोदी, वैक्सीन्स प्रोवाइड करना जॉब ऑफ नरेंद्र मोदी। एक्सक्यूज मी, प्रधानमंत्री सब करेंगे तो आपके मुख्यमंत्री क्या कर रहे हैं? Why have people of Delhi voted for Arvind Kejriwal? And let me tell you, Amit Shah has said categorically, disaster management comes under Arvind Kejriwal. Disaster management does not come under the Modi government. Wake up, smell the coffee, and for a change, Raghav Chadda, learn to own up and take responsibility. जवाबदेही और जिम्मेदारी, ये दोनों चीजों का लगता है
Okay, no, one second. I now want to go across to BC Bhartiya. Mr. Bhartiya runs the Bhartiya Medicare Services. He's also the national president of the Confederation of All India Traders. Mr. Bhartiya, we'll let the politics be on the side. Tell me, you're speaking to all the manufacturers, the traders, the suppliers. What are your main concerns at this moment? Do we genuinely have all the oxygen supply that's required? Because if we do, then why is there such a scarcity and so much shortage in so many hospitals that's being reported?
Rahul, we have to understand certain basic things. Earlier, oxygen was as a life-saving drug. Now, demand of oxygen has suddenly increased. It is being used as one of the medicine. More because of mass publicity कि ऑक्सीजन चाहिए. We have to have a proper distribution system. You see, here in Nagpur we have seen the collector has done such a marvelous work. He has identified hospitals, he has identified suppliers, taken their capacity and linked it to different hospitals so that the patients in hospitals at least get oxygen. There is no doubt that there is shortage in the sense that liquid oxygen has to reach. And rightly said by Mr. Siddharth Jain, as was referred, that the transportation facility that is required so that the tankers reach the filling stations as soon as possible. That is one big concern. Second concern is the number of people who come to the factory's oxygen bottling plant. Now, whether we put our energy in bottling the plant, the cylinders, or dealing with these people, you see, our priority is to set the cylinders to different hospitals. So there has to be proper management. Why there are traders? When we can have direct supplies from manufacturers to hospital, why not have that? And then a proper publicity has to be done that who requires oxygen when. You see, now as we generally see, people start keeping 1 cylinder, 2 cylinder in their house. Just in case corona comes to me, I have some protection. This also creates lot of shortage. Then oxygen is used for industrial purpose also.
Now this happens, Dr. Soin, you know, especially a lot of people, and I hate saying this, in this people like us category, because they have the means, they have the resources, they say, yaar, 2-3 cylinder manga ke ghar pe rakh lo. Now whether they need the cylinder at that time is not certain, but they apprehend that they may need the cylinder at some point in time, and they're seeing what's happening on TV. They realize that there'll be a problem when they need the cylinder. So they send their drivers off, they send people off, they make the phone calls, and they keep a few cylinders. So therefore, the shortage becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy and keeps getting worse and worse.
Rahul, that's absolutely true. There is a bit of hoarding going on at all levels, at one's homes, in one's shops, at the hospitals, in states, in countries. So I guess there is some hoarding going on in every, level of institution, if I might put it that way. And that's only natural. Just like the hospital always keeps some emergency stocks for people who are very sick in the ICU. But overall, I think the thing is that people should not panic when they get positive with COVID. Then not everybody needs oxygen, so there is no need to hoard them in big amounts or large cylinders, or for that matter, oxygen concentrators. You know, the oxygen concentrators are selling at a huge, premium. There is a big black market for oxygen concentrators, and I don't know why that is necessary, because Most people at home don't need oxygen. Having said that, if people at home are getting breathless and there is no oxygen, a very simple way of actually tiding over the crisis is prone breathing. So I think the benefits of prone breathing are not only there when the patients are on ventilators, but even when they're breathing normal air, or for that matter, breathing oxygen. They just have to lie on their stomach for 15, 20 minutes every hour or so and just take deep breaths. And that can actually improve the oxygenation of a person. So, but if that doesn't help, then obviously you need
so
to
this
go to
I've seen a
hospital,
lot of on social media. No, because I also wanted to use this show to try and find solutions rather than just highlight problems. So this prone breathing that you just spoke about, can you explain why this is important? Because why do you think this is something people should be doing? How is this different from the way you are normally?
Right, okay. So what happens is that when there is infection in the lungs and when there is inflammation in the lungs, there is some fluid that collects in the alveoli, which are the air spaces through which we breathe. And they are open if you're in the upright position, or if you're actually in the supine position, which is lying on your back, then only the upper parts of the lung are actually fully open. And the bottom and the dependent parts, which are basically dependent parts, are parts that are lying low in terms of gravity, they are actually shut. But if you lie prone, that means if you lie on your stomach, then these partially closed or completely closed parts of the lung open up. And that's why your oxygenation improves, because the larger the area, the larger the number of alveoli in your lungs that are open to exchange air, the better your oxygenation will become. So by changing posture, even to the left lateral side or the right lateral side, that means lying on your side, is better than lying on your back for these patients. But certainly lying on your stomach, which is prone, is very, very helpful. Whether the person needs oxygen or not, or even when they are on ventilators. It opens up more of the lung, gives you better oxygenation.
Okay. Rajiv Dubey is joining us. He runs the Business Today side of the India Today group. Rajiv, can you give our viewers a sense of just how companies that are in the oxygen space are gearing up to try and increase their production capacities? To what extent can they increase production? And you also had a story out about how the problem is really of transporting the oxygen, not the shortage of oxygen per se. So what is being done to try and counter that?
Yeah, clearly, Rahul, from the numbers that we got, India has more than enough supply of oxygen. We have 1,000 metric tons of stocks of daily supplies. We can produce on an average more than 7,000 tons of metric tons of oxygen. Our current demand is only about 54% of this. So it's not, the problem is not in oxygen supply. The problem is really in reaching it to the consumers, to the hospitals. And there the problem lies in the containers, in cryogenic containers, in cylinders. That's where the shortage is. And so the real thrust of the initiative, of the government's initiative, must be on ensuring greater supply of these cylinders or cryogenic containers. Just what companies like Tata, the Tata Group is doing. Going to be importing cryogenic containers. I believe shipment of that Tata Group tells us has already is going to leave tonight. Their suppliers, and is going to be available in India in their own place of transporting this. So then if you see Reliance, they have increased the production to 700 has all instruction, almost all the plants, all the industries.
Okay,
which
so
are
that's
using
Rajiv Dubey explaining how effort is being made to try and increase production capacity. We'll slip into a break. When we come back, we focused on how the Kumbh. You're on board the Newstrack. I want to show you this report of how different religious sects, organizations, bodies have come together to try and provide succor and relief to those who've been impacted by COVID. Because over the past several days, religious bodies have got a bad name because of the fact that they organize huge congregations, but some of these bodies are also doing exceptional work when it comes to helping out those who need it the most. And this is a report which highlights and showcases that.
As India battles monstrous COVID-19 surge, places of worship lend a helping hand to battle the contagious second wave. Temples, mosques and other sites of worship opened their gates to the needy. In the Maximum City, the famous 5-story Jain temple has now been converted into a COVID center with 100 oxygen beds.
We are right now present in Mumbai's Kandivali area, and this is Pawan Dham Jain temple, and this whole temple right now is converted into a COVID care center. Now in Mumbai, the most important is the oxygen bed, but this particular COVID care center has the capacity of 100 beds and it's completely oxygen bed. So people are going to get a huge benefit out of it.
The volunteers at the temple are working round the clock to ensure proper arrangements.
आज के इस क्रिटिकल पैंडेमिक सिचुएशन के अंदर आदमी को जब बेड नहीं मिलता है, बेड मिलता है तो ऑक्सीजन अवेलेबिलिटी इज देयर, ऑक्सीजन मिलता है तो मेडिसिन इज नॉट देयर। पर ये सभी चीज़ों का त्रिवेणी संगम करके यहाँ पे ये धार्मिक संकुल में रिजनेबल रेट से आदमी को प्रोवाइड करने की पूरी हम लोग की तैयारी है।
In Mumbai's Bhindi Bazaar, the mosques are relentlessly contributing to the COVID fight, delivering oxygen cylinders.
इसमें 25 से 30 वॉलंटियर्स है जो हमेशा 24 आवर्स रेडी रहते हैं और ये हमारी सर्विस गालिबन लास्ट ईयर 31/5/2020 से शुरू हुई एंड मोर देन 350 एंड 400 पेशेंट को तब तक के दे चुके हैं।
In Gujarat's Vadodara too, religious places are equipping the premises with COVID beds and ventilators.
There is a crisis of bed, there is a crunches of bed in the hospitals, and Swaminarayan Temple has opened this 500-bed hospital in its premises in Vadodara to ensure no one leaves behind. All COVID patients get beds. All these bedside you see in these images are fully equipped with oxygen cylinders. A dedicated team of medical practitioners, doctors, nurses, paramedic staff, all ensuring best treatment.
The Jahangirpura Mosque has converted into a 50-bed hospital, which is also equipped with oxygen cylinders. For the past 1 month, the mosque has been treating COVID patients.
Community, the Muslim community have come together and converted this mosque, which used to be a place of worship for all, in this particular area. The Jahangirpura Masjid of Vadodara is now a semi-hospital with oxygen-equipped bed BiPAC machines. Out of these 50-bed hospital, which has been prepared for last 6 days, is now functional. A team of doctors, medical staff, nurses is taking care of all the patients, as there are a number of serious patients, those who are being treated.
The service by these temples and mosques are a reminder to all communities that we are together in this fight against an invisible enemy. With Saurabh Bhaktania from Mumbai and Ashutosh Mishra from Vadodara, Bureau Report, India Today.
This is where we wrap up the Newstrack tonight. I look forward to seeing you at 8 p.m. tomorrow evening with another action-packed edition of the Newstrack. Till then, from all of us here, goodbye. Good night.
Hello everyone, this is Rahul Kanwal here. Hope you enjoyed this video. For the latest news and analysis, like and subscribe the India Today YouTube channel and don't forget to press the bell icon to stay updated.